Her heels were still by the door. Her phone was inside. Her purse hadn't moved. But Lindsay Buziak wasn't answering. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Jason Zalo had just pulled up to 1702 D'Souza Place, a freshly built home on a peaceful cul-de-sac in Saanich, British Columbia. Lindsay had gone inside half an hour earlier to meet clients she'd never seen before, referred by a woman with a strange accent, using a fake name and an untraceable number. Jason knocked on the door. No response. He called her phone, straight to voicemail. He peered through the glass. Her belongings were sitting exactly where she would have left them. But there was no movement, no sound, no sign of her. He walked around the back. The patio door was unlocked. He stepped inside. The first floor looked pristine, like a showroom. Everything in place, untouched, lifeless. He called her name. Nothing. He climbed the stairs. The door to the master bedroom was open. She was lying face down in a pool of blood. She had been stabbed over 40 times. No signs of struggle, no robbery, no forced entry. Her phone and purse untouched. Her killers gone. The people she met that day, the man and woman who greeted her at the door, have never been identified. The phone they used was registered under a fake name and discarded the moment she died. No fingerprints, no DNA, not a single trace. And Lindsay? She told her father she didn't want to go. She told Jason something felt off. But she went anyway, because backing out of a potential $1 million deal wasn't something she was willing to do. What she didn't know was that someone had spent weeks creating the perfect setup. A fake identity, a fake buyer, a fake story designed to lure her into that empty house. And the moment she stepped inside, the clock started ticking. The only thing more terrifying than how carefully they planned it is the fact that they got away with it. We rewind now, deep into the days leading up to February 2nd, 2008, when everything still felt normal, until the dark current began to take shape. Lindsay Buziak was 24, warm and full of life, building her real estate career with determination and a radiant smile. She worked for RE/MAX, leasing houses, helping parents, couples, and first-time homeowners imagine a future in a space she introduced them to. Her work ethic was legendary. She was responsive, caring, always early, always prepared. She had a loyal boyfriend, Jason Zalo, who shared, literally and emotionally, her world of real estate strategy and ambition. He waited while she made showings. He drove her to work. He supported every sale, every victory, every challenge made. Then came that first call, late in January, from a voice she did not recognize but could not ignore. A woman claimed to be shopping with her husband and was looking for homes priced around $1 million. A big listing meant big money. Lindsay listened carefully, but her instincts reeled. The woman's accent didn't gel. She'd say something like, "Yes, we're very interested," but it would come out clipped and flat. Then she'd transition back into a softer tone, only to revert again. One moment she'd drop a regional reference, the next she'd lapse into something unfamiliar. Lindsay couldn't place it. There was little hesitation in her words, no small talk, no niceties, just a script of urgency she couldn't trust. They started calling daily, at first twice a day, then 3, even 4 times. Each call was measured, no follow-up questions, no extra conversation. She reminded them of the showing policy, similar homes in similar areas. Until one text changed everything. She replied once, asking, "Is this for sure?" and received a curt confirmation, "Yes, confirm 1 p.m. tomorrow." But no names, no reference for identity, no mention of who referred them. She tried calling back to clarify, straight to voicemail. She talked to her father, Jeff Buziak, a man who'd raised her into confident adulthood, and told him, "Dad, something's wrong with this." He reassured her it might be a misunderstanding. "It's business, honey," he said. "Go talk to them." Next, she confided in Jason. He offered to wait outside during the showing. She hesitated, then said she'd be okay. He insisted. Online, Lindsay's typically active profile went dark. No Facebook updates, no conversations, no weekend plans, no comments. An unusual silence from someone who usually shared her life as a celebration. Investigators later confirmed that this disconnect lasted for nearly 2 weeks before her death, an eerie calm in the approach of a storm. She mapped out her showings meticulously that morning. 4 vacant houses prepared just as the caller requested. $1 million aesthetic, move-in ready, staged. Each had lockbox codes, easy access, professional signage, no complications, no surprises, just a smooth, typical Thursday in the business. Until it wasn't. Lunch came and went. She met Jason at a local cafe around 3 p.m. They talked like normal, work, dinner plans, an upcoming weekend. He drove her home. She changed into heels, grabbed her purse and keys, and said, "Okay, I'll be there early." Their goodbye was tender, warm. She smiled, she hugged him. She walked to the driveway. They texted, "Be safe, you too." He headed off, only a few kilometers away, parking in an auto lot, waiting. Minutes later, her clients, or whoever they were, reached her location. With rehearsed politeness, they greeted her. A man and a woman, early 30s, looking sharp, confident, the kind of clients Lindsay knew could bring a commission. They handed her the burner phone number she had. Everything looked real. She stepped inside. 8 hours later, she was dead. The house was perfect, quiet, new, staged, empty. The kind of property that sells itself. The kind you expect to walk through, admire, and leave. Not the kind you expect to die in. It sat at the end of D'Souza Place, a dead-end street in an upscale neighborhood in Saanich, British Columbia. No traffic, no noise, no neighbors walking dogs, just 4 recently built homes, all lined up like models on display. Lindsay Buziak had chosen this listing carefully. She'd reviewed the details, opened the lockbox, and prepped it for the showing. This was exactly what the mysterious client had asked for. Private, move-in ready, and around $1 million. She was doing everything right, despite every part of her gut telling her this didn't feel right at all. At 5:30 p.m. on February 2nd, 2008, 2 people walked down the street toward the house. A man and a woman. The woman was wearing a striking black and white dress with a pink pattern. The man was tall, average build, with dark hair. They looked calm, normal, professional, even polished. A witness standing nearby saw them approach Lindsay and exchange brief introductions. There was no sign of hesitation, no confrontation, just 3 people shaking hands. Then they walked through the front door, and the door closed. That was the last time anyone saw Lindsay Buziak alive. Jason Zylo was sitting in his car nearby. He'd offered to wait outside to keep an eye on things, just in case. He knew she'd been nervous. She had told him about the strange voice on the phone. She had repeated, more than once, "This just feels weird." Jason pulled up to the cul-de-sac shortly after the showing began. He watched the front of the house, saw what looked like figures moving inside, then decided to give her space. He drove around the corner and parked again, this time out of sight. He texted her, no response. He waited, minutes passed, still nothing. He texted again, called. Straight to voicemail. 10 minutes became 20. The tension started to build. He called again, no answer. At that moment, Jason didn't know Lindsay was already dead. Inside the house, everything was silent. There were no sounds of a struggle, no broken objects, no cries for help. Later, investigators would say Lindsay was attacked almost immediately after entering the upstairs bedroom. She was stabbed over 40 times, so violently that the knife pierced through her lungs, heart, and spine. The wounds were concentrated, furious, but there were no defensive injuries, which means Lindsay never even had the chance to fight back. She didn't scream, she didn't run, she didn't have time. What's chilling is what came next. There were no fingerprints, no murder weapon, no DNA, no forced entry, no signs of robbery. Her purse was still there, her phone, her jewelry. Nothing had been stolen, nothing had been touched, except her. The killers had walked into that house with her, then walked out, leaving no trace. But here's what doesn't add up. If this was premeditated, and it clearly was, why go through all the trouble of making it look like a normal showing? Why the fake voice? Why the burner phone? Why the woman in the dress? They could have attacked her anywhere. So why did they build this scene? Why lure her to a vacant home, in broad daylight, on a quiet street? Unless the scene itself was part of the message. And if it was, who was the message meant for? Jason Zalo sat in his car just a few streets away, watching the time. It had been 15 minutes since Lindsay walked into the house with the clients. Normally, she'd be texting him updates, telling him how it was going, joking about what they were wearing, saying things like, "This guy's all talk," or "She's got that fake rich energy." But tonight, nothing. He'd already tried calling once. No answer. Now sitting there in the growing dusk, his fingers hovered over his phone again. He called a second time. Still nothing. A third time. Straight to voicemail. He sat up, alert now. He put the car in gear and pulled back toward the house. Her car was still parked in front. Lights on inside, but no movement, no sound, just the eerie quiet of an expensive cul-de-sac with no one outside and no one watching. He stepped out and walked to the front door. He knocked. Nothing. Again, louder this time. Still nothing. He rang the doorbell. The chime echoed inside the house, but no footsteps came toward the door. He peered through the frosted glass at the front entrance. And that's when he saw it, Lindsay's heels, sitting side by side just inside the door, her purse beside them. Nothing disturbed. She was still here. He knew Lindsay. She wouldn't walk away without her phone. She wouldn't leave the front door locked during a showing, and she definitely wouldn't ignore him. Something was wrong. He called again. Voicemail. At that moment, everything shifted, from confusion to unease to fear. He walked around the side of the house, gravel crunching under his shoes. The backyard was quiet. The trees didn't move. Nothing did. And then he saw the patio door, unlocked, open, just slightly. His heart dropped. He called her name. Nothing. He stepped inside. The silence was suffocating. Not the peaceful kind, more like something holding its breath. The kitchen was untouched, not a dish out of place, no sign of movement. He turned left, the hallway, nothing. Living room, still. Lindsay? His voice bounced off the walls and came back to him. The air felt thick. He moved cautiously to the stairs and began climbing. Halfway up, he stopped. His mind told him not to look. His body kept going. At the top of the stairs, the door to the master bedroom was cracked open. A faint smear of something dark ran down the edge of the white frame. He pushed the door wider, and that's when he saw her. Lindsay was lying face down on the carpet in the middle of the bedroom, her body motionless. Blood had soaked through her blouse and pooled beneath her. It was everywhere, on the carpet, the baseboards, the bedding nearby. She didn't move. She didn't speak. She didn't respond when he called her name. Jason rushed to her side. He dropped to his knees and tried to check for a pulse, even though deep down he already knew there wasn't one. She was cold. When paramedics arrived, they declared her dead at the scene. Official reports confirmed she had been stabbed over 40 times, in the chest, neck, and back. The attack had been fast and merciless. The wounds were deep, clustered, violent. But what stood out most was what wasn't there. There were no defensive wounds, not a single one. She didn't fight back. She didn't scream. She never even had time to raise her hands. The first strike had likely been sudden and fatal. She never saw it coming. Her purse, her phone, her jewelry, still there. Nothing missing. There were no signs of forced entry, no signs of robbery, no signs of a struggle downstairs. The home looked like any other post-showing house until you reached the top of the stairs. Forensics found no fingerprints, no footprints, no DNA. The murder weapon was never found. The only trace was the horror left in that room. Police sealed off the house and began the investigation immediately. Jason and his friend were separated and brought in for questioning, standard procedure. They were fingerprinted, interviewed, and held until their statements were verified. Within the year, Jason would be cleared entirely. But even then, something about the timing didn't sit right. Jason had arrived just 10 minutes after the appointment began. He saw Lindsay's car, saw the house, but never saw anyone leave. The murder took place somewhere between 5:30 and 5:45. So here's the question. If Lindsay was killed that quickly, where were her killers when Jason arrived? Were they still inside when he was knocking on the door? Were they watching him from a window, waiting for their chance to slip out? Did they leave through the back seconds before he circled around? And if they were gone, how did they escape without being seen? There were no getaway vehicles. No neighbors noticed anyone running. Who walks out of a murder scene in daylight on foot in an upscale neighborhood and vanishes? Unless they'd rehearsed every second. Unless they'd planned this moment to the minute. Unless the house wasn't just a trap, but a performance. A performance designed to make Lindsay disappear and never reveal who made her vanish. No one saw them leave. Not a single neighbor. Not a passing driver. Not one person on the cul-de-sac. There were no voices echoing through the street. No slamming doors. No running footsteps. Just silence. And by the time Jason found Lindsay's body, her killers were already gone, like they had never existed at all. This wasn't the chaos of a botched crime. It was absence, precision. Nothing out of place, nothing disrupted, just a young woman, dead in a room that looked like it had never been touched. Police immediately locked down the area. They canvassed every house on D'Souza Place. Every neighbor was questioned. Nobody had seen a couple walk out. Nobody noticed anyone fleeing. No one heard screaming. No vehicles were heard starting up. No tires squealing. No doors slamming. It was as if the street swallowed them whole. And the house itself? A perfect stage. It offered no answers, no clues, no noise complaints, no tripped alarms, just a fresh, clean build at the end of a quiet street. But there was one thing: the phone. The only trace of contact Lindsay ever had with the woman who lured her there. Investigators traced it back. It wasn't a personal cell. It wasn't a landline. It wasn't even traceable to a person. It was a prepaid burner phone, purchased 3 months before the murder. It had only ever called one number: Lindsay Buziak's. That phone had been activated in Vancouver, used only to coordinate this one meeting. No other calls were made, no texts, no internet access, nothing. It was created with one purpose: to lure Lindsay to that house. And once her blood soaked into the carpet, the phone was turned off, permanently. It never pinged again. To investigators, it was like chasing a shadow with no source, a voice with no body, a murder with no trail. This wasn't carelessness. This was planning. And the planning didn't stop with the phone. Inside the house, forensic teams worked for hours. They dusted every surface, took photographs of every inch, scanned for prints, hairs, fibers, any trace the killers might have left behind. They found nothing. No fingerprints, no DNA, no foreign hair strands, no usable fibers, nothing under Lindsay's fingernails. No signs of struggle in the hallway. No blood splatter outside the bedroom, no footprints, no trace. Even the patio door the killer likely exited through, clean. Some believe the killers may have worn disposable gloves and shoe covers. They may have changed clothes in the house. They may have cleaned up afterward. Whatever they did, it worked. The only physical evidence at the crime scene belonged to Lindsay. She had been stabbed over 40 times, yet the entire home was clean. And her belongings? Untouched. Her purse sat where she placed it when she walked in. Her phone was nearby. Nothing was missing. No drawers opened, no cash taken. Her jewelry was still on her. This wasn't a robbery. It wasn't impulsive. It wasn't emotional. It was methodical, calculated, cold. Police began reviewing surveillance footage from every intersection nearby: banks, gas stations, storefronts. But D'Souza Place was just secluded enough, and just quiet enough, that there were no active cameras near the crime scene itself. No video of the couple arriving, no video of them leaving, no license plates, no vehicle description, no evidence they were ever there. Which raised a terrifying question. How did they leave? Some investigators believe they fled on foot, through the backyard, along a wooded trail. Others think they parked far enough away to avoid cameras and walked the rest of the distance. But here's the problem. If Jason arrived around 5:45 p.m., and the appointment started at 5:30, then Lindsay was attacked shortly after she entered the house. That leaves less than 15 minutes for the killers to commit the murder and escape. Quietly, on foot, in daylight, without being seen. Not just escape, but vanish. One officer later told reporters they didn't just plan the murder, they rehearsed it. They practiced the entrance, the kill, and the exit until it was second nature. This wasn't their first crime. It was just the cleanest. And there was something else, something even harder to explain. The witness who saw the man and woman walk into the house with Lindsay never saw them come out. And when they gave descriptions to police, the sketches were specific, but eerily generic. The woman was described as white, 35 to 40 years old, shoulder-length blonde hair, wearing a black dress with a white and pink pattern. The man was described as 6 feet tall, dark hair, clean-shaven, medium build, wearing a tan jacket. The sketches were broadcast nationally. Hundreds of tips came in. Not one led anywhere. Some believed the blonde woman was a disguise, possibly a wig. Others speculated that she was planted there for exactly that purpose, to make the whole thing look legitimate. Real estate agents meet couples. They don't expect to be attacked by one. And that's what made this so cruelly effective. No one was alarmed when Lindsay shook their hands. No one raised an eyebrow when they entered the home. Everything looked normal. right up until it wasn't. The killers didn't just plan her murder, they erased themselves from the story. They left no trail, no evidence, not even a motive. So the question is no longer how they did it. The question now is, who would go to this much trouble to make sure Lindsay Buziak died, and why did they want her gone so badly they couldn't risk being remembered at all? Once news of the unspeakable murder broke, people began hunting for answers, and inevitably, their questions turned to Jason Zylo, the man who drove her to that house and found her body. Why was he late? When the appointment was set for 5:30 p.m., Lindsay texted Jason, "I'm going in now." He was nearby at a mechanic shop, having offered to wait close by, but he didn't arrive until nearly 5:45. Why the delay? According to phone and traffic data, he left the parking lot on time. But whether he doubled back, parked strategically, or simply misjudged distance, he didn't arrive when she expected. Some interpreted it as innocence, an attempt to talk herself down. Others saw red flags. Why did he bring a friend? Jason wasn't alone when he showed up at the house. He brought a friend, someone who'd helped organize his route earlier that day. That coworker later told police he was there because Jason was uneasy. But why bring a friend if you simply want to check on your partner? Especially when protocols discourage people from entering crime scenes, even unknowingly. Why didn't he go inside sooner? Instead of stepping directly to the front door, Jason circled the property and phoned 911. But he didn't force entry. Why not? Wouldn't urgency and desperation demand he rush in? These lingering questions fueled gossip. She was dead in a closed house, with only one person acting suspiciously close to it. Police moved quickly. They interviewed him and his friends separately, twice. They reviewed call records. They verified his location via cell tower triangulation. They cached nearby security cameras. There was no sign he had used force, no traces of anxiety or hesitation that indicated guilt. Despite suspicions, investigators ultimately concluded Jason was not involved. By 2009, police issued a formal statement. Jason had not been implicated. His cooperation, location logs, and his unblemished record left them confident he was innocent. He was cleared, but he would never be free. Even without charges, whispers persisted. Some said he should have forced the door. Others wondered, why leave her there alone? And there were those who claimed his calm demeanor, when the news was announced, didn't match the horror. Jason's life unraveled. Nights were sleepless. Media circled him like vultures. Facebook posts showed a grief-stricken man barely making sense of the hours as they passed. He told his own story, carefully. He insisted he loved her, that he tried to intervene, that he called and waited, waiting, then rushed upstairs, found her body, and never left. His friend changed, shyer, quieter, determined to avoid anything front page. Jason hired a private investigator. He met with police, he attended counseling, but nothing could erase the questions people kept asking. He didn't go in sooner because he believed breaking in would risk hurting her more. The front door was locked. He still tried the patio. He could hear voices in the neighborhood, footsteps. He feared stepping into a violent scene alone. Still, the silence haunted him. But here's what truly puzzles even seasoned detectives. No one else came forward with sightings of her killers. No security footage captured any suspicious activity. No motives materialized. And yet they had killed her in cold blood, walked out clean, and vanished. Amid investigation, several oddities remained. A deep fear gripping Jason the night before. He said he couldn't sleep, that Lindsay didn't either. A set of surveillance videos from convenience stores and banks in adjacent neighborhoods without entrance to the cul-de-sac, none of which showed a suspicious vehicle. Neighbors claimed no visitors in the days before. Everyone said the voice on the phone wasn't familiar. Jason's alibi stood up. His phone history matched police logs. Investigators had nothing more to hold on. They found no evidence, but the public wasn't convinced. Emotion doesn't follow logic. His closest friends still recount, he never dropped it. He never stopped looking. They believe he still wakes up, haunted by a question he can't answer. If he hadn't been late, if he'd gone in faster, could he have saved her? Jason Zylo was cleared, but his presence that evening still raises more questions than answers. Why bring someone with you? Why wait for permission to enter? Why not break in when she was missing? The harder question is this: if everything about Jason checks out, who actually didn't want her found? Because as Jason's story shows, when the prime suspect is ruled out, the case only gets darker. After Lindsay's death, suspicion didn't just hover, it clung to every corner of her life. People wanted answers, but more than that, they wanted someone to blame. And in the absence of clear evidence, theories began to form like cracks in glass, splintering in every direction. One of the earliest and most persistent theories was that Lindsay had been the target of a professional hit. It wasn't random, it wasn't emotional, it wasn't messy. The killers had used a burner phone, activated more than a month before her death, used only to contact Lindsay. They had picked a brand new home at the edge of a quiet cul-de-sac, with no surveillance, no neighbors nearby. They'd walked in calmly, left no fingerprints, no DNA, no trace, and disappeared without a sound. It had all the hallmarks of a planned execution. And then there was the drug connection. Just weeks before her murder, Lindsay had reached out to a former friend in Calgary. That friend was connected, through family or otherwise, to one of the biggest drug busts in Alberta's history. And within days of that arrest, Lindsay was dead. The theory was simple. Someone thought she was an informant, and they wanted to send a message. Police followed the lead. They traced her calls. They interviewed her contacts. They looked for cartel links, but nothing stuck. There were no direct threats, no suspicious money, no known ties to the case. And while the hit theory explained the planning, it didn't explain the rage. Lindsay wasn't just killed. She was stabbed over 40 times, in the chest, in the back, in the neck. Her lungs were punctured, her heart shredded. It was brutal, personal, violent, more than necessary, more than efficient. Not the kind of thing a cartel does to send a clean message. This was about pain, about making her suffer. Someone hated her. So if it wasn't a hit, was it jealousy? Investigators turned their focus inward. Friends, coworkers, exes, even Jason's circle. Who knew her schedule? Who knew she had a showing that day? Who had access to her life, her routines, her fears? There were whispers. Maybe a jealous colleague, maybe a rival agent. Maybe someone upset she moved on from a past relationship. She had mentioned to people that something about the client's voice felt off, fake, forced. Was it a woman in disguise? A friend turned enemy? None of it could be proved. And then, in 2017, 9 years after her death, a message appeared online. It wasn't buried deep in some conspiracy forum. It was posted directly to a website run by Lindsay's father. A public page. A digital wound. The comment read, "I killed Lindsay, and the stupid cops will never prove it." It was anonymous. The IP address was traced to a proxy. The names mentioned in the post, half nonsense, half rumor, led nowhere. The confession was disturbing, but police said it revealed no new information. Just someone playing God with a grieving family. But still, it shook the case loose again, because someone, somewhere, was still watching. And if the person who wrote that comment wasn't the killer, it means the real killer is still out there, reading, lurking, knowing every time their name almost gets spoken. That comment wasn't the first time someone had taunted the family, but it was the boldest, the most brazen, a confession with no consequences, and the fact that police couldn't do anything about it, that might be the most haunting part of all. So here's what we know. Lindsay was careful. She told people she was nervous. She asked for Jason to stay close. She thought the client sounded fake. She didn't want to go, but she went anyway. The killers used a fake name, a fake story, a fake number. But their hatred, that was real. Their anger was real. And their plan worked. Because 15 years later, they're still free, still quiet, still watching. And no one has ever been able to answer the one question that might solve everything. Who hated Lindsay Buziak enough to do all this? And how many people are still protecting them? After Lindsay's death, her father, Jeff Buziak, refused to let her become just another unsolved crime statistic. Year after year, as the world moved on, he stayed in motion, marching down Vancouver Island roads, holding her name high on weather-worn signs, creating an annual memorial walk that gathered more mourners each time. He made sure that everyone who drove past knew who she was, that someone was still fighting for her, and that someone believed justice could still be found, even when the official investigation had grown cold. At first, his activism came as a whisper of hope, But with each passing year, his frustration with police grew louder. He questioned their methods. He challenged their choices. He pressed them for answers the system withheld. He spoke to media outlets across Canada, reminding them and the public that the person who lured his daughter into that empty house and silenced her was still out there. In interviews, Jeff shared details the police wouldn't, interviews that sparked public curiosity and occasional backlash from skeptical journalists. But he was undeterred. He believed someone knew something, someone who had seen the couple, heard the voice, or felt the change in Lindsay's demeanor before she walked into that house. And so he built his mission into a movement. Every February, for 8 years running, family, friends, and strangers marched with him through the streets of Saanich. They carried photos, flowers, signs saying, "Remember Lindsay" and "Justice for Lindsay." The image of a father walking with a daughter's photo pinned to his chest became a ritual of grief and demand, a reminder that unresolved murder leaves wounds that bleed forever. Beyond marches, Jeff addressed city councils, spoke during police briefings, and maintained a publicly available timeline on the case. He pointed out inconsistencies, contradictory witness statements, slow progress on leads, disappearing pieces of evidence. Investigators dismissed his critiques, saying they needed time and privacy in their work. But Jeff refused to wait. He hired private investigators, funded tip lines, and even funded DNA reanalysis through independent labs, the first time a grieving father had openly partnered with forensic experts outside police oversight. In 2021, his persistent pressure partly led to the formation of a new task force that combined efforts from Saanich Police, RCMP, and even the FBI, thanks in part to the viral attention his public actions had kept alive. Still, as much as he did, there was no arrest. There was no showdown. The collectors of evidence, the guardians of truth, kept telling him it wasn't enough. A father's hope can be powerful, but forensic proof? That can't be faked. So Jeff kept protesting. He kept walking. He kept talking. He kept a father's vow alive. And yet, as the files piled up, so did the silence. He had demanded answers. He had searched for confessions. He had pursued DNA trails. And yet, nothing had cracked. No one had been charged. No one had been named. It was like the system had finally spoken. We've done all we can. But Jeff wasn't ready to accept what the system couldn't do. He trusted better. He believed deeper. He refused to let the story end with her death. Because somewhere out there, someone knew something. Someone kept a secret. Someone watched, and still they're walking free. A father's love is one of the strongest forces on earth. So what happens when it meets silence? When pursuit hits walls of bureaucracy? When evidence remains just out of reach? Jeff Buziak didn't stop fighting, and his relentless walk down the streets of Victoria, year after year, did more than honor a daughter. It forced a community to look. It forced the case to stay alive. But is it enough to draw out someone hiding in plain sight? 15 years have passed, and still, no arrests, no charges, no closure. The case remains open, but cold. The Saanich Police Department has partnered with the RCMP and even brought in the FBI. Advanced DNA tools are being used. Genealogical analysis, AI-enhanced audio reviews, pattern-matching software, technology that didn't exist when Lindsay was killed. They've re-interviewed old witnesses, reanalyzed fibers, re-examined statements. They've reopened the files, not because of new evidence, but because of the same aching absence that has defined this case since day one. There is no reason Lindsay Buziak should be dead. There is no financial gain, no robbery, no revenge note, no threat, no confession, only silence. The phone used to lure her in? Gone. The couple she met? Still unknown. The motive? Still a mystery. And even with hundreds of tips, dozens of detectives, and 15 years of public pressure, no one has been charged. But here's what we do know. Lindsay had a feeling. She told her dad something was off. She said the voice on the phone felt wrong, that it didn't make sense, that it didn't feel like a real client. She texted friends. She mentioned her nerves. She asked Jason to be nearby. She walked into that house anyway, because it was her job, because she was responsible, because she wanted to succeed, and because she trusted that if anything went wrong, someone would be there, but no one was. And whoever planned that house showing knew that. They knew how long it would take. They knew when Jason would show up. They knew the street was quiet. They knew Lindsay wouldn't leave her purse or her heels or her phone unattended unless she felt safe. They knew her, maybe not by name, but by routine. And they used that knowledge not to steal from her, not to send a message, but to erase her. Since that day, her father Jeff has kept her story alive. He's marched, spoken, protested, pleaded. He has never stopped asking one question: who planned this? And every February, when he retraces her final steps, the question echoes again. Because this wasn't an accident. It wasn't random. It was deliberate. Someone picked up a phone and pretended to be someone else. Someone shook her hand and smiled. Someone watched the door close. And someone waited for the right moment to make sure Lindsay never walked out again. She was careful. She had doubts. She said it felt wrong, and she was right. So now the question is no longer whether this case can be solved. It's this: how many people know who did it and are still protecting them? And how long can a secret like that survive before someone finally talks? Because Lindsay deserves more than silence. She deserves an answer.